On the barren surface of the distant planet, the cold winds howled through the abandoned research station. Jace huddled near a small fire, the flame flickering weakly against the bitter cold. The storm outside had picked up again, the temperature dropping rapidly. His breath came out in small clouds as he wrapped his jacket tightly around himself. It had been a routine mission, or so he thought. He'd been assigned to monitor weather patterns on the planet's surface for a few weeks. The cold was nothing new, but the intensity of the storms had been growing over the past few days. It had gotten worse when the latest storm hit. The visibility had dropped to nearly zero, and his equipment was no use against the freezing winds. The radio in his pack crackled to life, but the signal was faint. No one could hear him out here. It was just him and the wilderness of the planet. He checked the time. The storm had been going on for hours. He knew he had to find some shelter before the temperature dropped any lower. If he didn't, he'd freeze to death before he could make it back to the base. Shivering, he grabbed his pack and trudged forward, hoping to find some shelter. The wind howled in his ears, and snow whipped around him. Every step felt like it took forever as the cold seemed to bite deeper into his skin. He was beginning to lose track of time when he spotted a narrow opening in the side of a rocky hill. It looked like a cave. He didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, barely able to feel his fingers anymore, and rushed into the shelter of the cave. Inside, the temperature was much warmer, though still cold. The storm raged outside, but at least here he was shielded from the worst of it. He dropped his pack to the ground and began to unbundle himself from the layers of clothing. That's when he noticed something strange. A figure stood in the back of the cave, just beyond the faint glow of his flashlight. At first, Jace thought it was some sort of animal, but as his eyes adjusted, he saw it was a person. No, not quite a person. The creature had a humanoid shape, but its features were distinctly animal. She had sharp, fox-like ears and a long, bushy tail that flicked behind her. Her eyes, a deep amber, seemed to glow in the dark, and her face was framed by soft fur that glimmered in the light of the fire. Jace froze. His heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected to find another living being out here, let alone something like this. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice coming out a little shakier than he meant. The creature's amber eyes studied him closely. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she spoke in a voice that was soft but firm. "I am Lyra," she said. "I didn't expect anyone to find me." Jace was still trying to process what he was seeing. He'd heard rumors about the planet being home to ancient creatures, but nothing that had ever seemed credible. He couldn't believe he was standing in front of one of them now. I wasn't expecting to find anyone either," he said slowly, still eyeing her warily. "What are you?" Lyra tilted her head, her sharp ears twitching slightly. "I am of the Vulpine race. We were once the guardians of this world, but that was long ago." Jace felt a wave of confusion and curiosity. He had no idea what she meant by guardians or Vulpine. The only thing he knew for sure was that this wasn't a situation he had trained for. "Guardians," he repeated, stepping forward cautiously. "Of this world, what do you mean?" Lyra's eyes darkened slightly as she regarded him. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "We were once the rulers of this planet, but our kingdom fell. Now we are scattered, hiding from those who would seek to use our power." Jace's mind raced. A race of fox-like beings that had ruled the planet. It sounded like a fairy tale, but standing in front of him was something far more real than a story. "Power?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What kind of power?" She gave a small, sad smile. "You don't need to know about that. Not yet anyway. The storm will pass in time, but for now we should share the shelter. There is little warmth here, but it is better than freezing." Jace nodded, realizing there wasn't much choice. The storm was too fierce for him to go back out into the cold. Besides, he wasn't sure if he could trust her, but he also had no other options. Reluctantly, he sat down near the fire, keeping a cautious distance from Lyra. She sat across from him, her sharp eyes still fixed on him. The silence stretched on, and Jace found himself wondering just how long she had been alone on this planet. He had heard rumors about strange creatures from ancient times, but nothing had prepared him for meeting one face to face. He was starting to feel uncomfortable under her gaze, but something about her was also oddly calming. After a while, he spoke again. "So what exactly are you doing here?" Lyra's eyes softened. "I am one of the last of my kind. The rest of my people are gone. We live in hiding now, away from the eyes of those who would seek to destroy us. I wander these lands alone, waiting for the time when I can restore what was lost." Jace wasn't sure what to make of this. It sounded like something out of a history book, but it was too real to dismiss. "So you're saying you're the last of your people?" he asked, trying to wrap his head around it. Lyra nodded, her eyes distant. "For now. But there are others out there who know of our existence. They seek what remains of our power." Jace couldn't help but feel a sense of dread settle in his stomach. He wasn't sure why, but something about Lyra's words seemed to carry an unspoken warning. Something was coming, something dangerous. As the night went on, the storm outside didn't let up. Jace kept his eyes on the fire, the only source of light and warmth in the dark cave. But no matter how many times he tried to shift his focus, he found himself glancing over at Lyra, who seemed to be studying him just as intently as he was studying her. Her eyes were captivating, but there was also a sense of unease in them, as if she was waiting for something. But for what? "You seem different," Jace said finally, breaking the silence. "I mean, you're not like anyone I've ever met." Lyra's lips twitched, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I suppose that's true. We, the Vulpines, are not like your people. We have abilities, things that you wouldn't understand, things you wouldn't believe." Jace frowned. "Abilities like what?" Lyra's smile faded slightly, and she looked away, her tail twitching behind her. "It's not something I can explain easily. Perhaps you'll understand when the time comes." Jace opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, the cave trembled. The ground beneath them shook as if something massive had moved outside. Both of them froze. Lyra's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing, and she rose to her feet, her tail flicking nervously. "What was that?" Jace asked, heart racing. Lyra's ears pricked, and she turned toward the entrance of the cave. "Something is out there," she said quietly. "Something not good." Before Jace could react, Lyra turned and vanished into the shadows of the cave. He blinked, confused, but when he tried to follow her, she was already gone. "Lyra," he called out, but there was no response. He was alone again. The shaking stopped, but the sense of unease never left. Jace sat down, his mind spinning. Was she real? Had he imagined the whole thing? Or was there something more to this planet than he had ever known? The cold seemed to creep back into his bones as the fire flickered weakly. He stared into the flames, unsure of what to believe. Whatever was happening, he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a simple scientist on a routine mission. He had just stumbled upon something much bigger. And he didn't know if he was ready for it. Jace awoke with a start, the dim light of early morning filtering through the cracks in the cave. His body ached from sleeping on the cold stone floor, but it wasn't the physical discomfort that had woken him. It was the strange feeling that something was wrong, that something was missing. Lyra was gone. He sat up quickly, his heart racing. The fire had burned out in the night, and the cave was now cold and quiet. The storm from the previous day had passed, but the sense of unease still hung in the air. The faint tremor of the earth still lingered in Jace's mind, a constant reminder that something had moved in the darkness outside the cave. Lyra hadn't been there when he woke, and it bothered him more than he cared to admit. He stood up and grabbed his pack, checking for any sign of her. There was nothing, no trail, no footprints, nothing. It was as though she had never been there at all. Jace's mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened. Was she real? Was she just a figment of his imagination, born of the cold and isolation? But as he stepped outside into the light of the new day, something caught his eye. There in the distance was a figure standing among the trees, a figure with sharp ears and a long tail. Lyra. She didn't see him at first, her back turned as she gazed out over the landscape. Jace hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to approach. He had so many questions, so many things he needed to understand. What was she? What was her purpose? Why had she been hiding out here on this lonely planet? But before he could move, Lyra turned and saw him standing there. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a brief moment, everything else seemed to fade away. Her amber gaze was intense, almost as if she was reading him. It was both unsettling and mesmerizing. "I see you've decided to follow me," she said softly, her voice calm, though it held a trace of something else, something Jace couldn't quite place. I didn't know where else to go," Jace replied, his voice uncertain. "I thought you had disappeared. It felt like you were gone." Lyra tilted her head, studying him as though she were trying to understand his words. "I didn't leave. I needed to see if you were truly ready to learn what I have to show you." Jace frowned, confused. "Ready? Ready for what?" "The truth," Lyra said simply. "The truth about me, about my people, and about the power that lies beneath this planet." Jace felt a chill run down his spine. Power. What power was she talking about? The words she spoke felt heavy, like they carried more meaning than she was willing to share. "I don't understand," he admitted, stepping closer. "I just want to know what's going on here. Why am I even here? What's really happening?" Lyra's eyes softened, and she took a slow step toward him. "You are here because it is your destiny to be part of this. You were meant to find me, to learn what I have to offer, but you are not ready. Not yet." Jace opened his mouth to ask more questions, but before he could speak, the ground beneath them trembled again. This time, the shaking was stronger, more forceful. The sky above darkened, and a strange sound filled the air, a low, rumbling growl like the growl of some massive creature. Lyra's ears twitched, and she spun around, her eyes wide with a sudden urgency. "They're here," she whispered. "They've come." "Who?" Jace asked, his heart pounding. Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she motioned for him to follow her, her quick movements a blur as she sprinted toward the trees. Jace had no choice but to follow, his legs moving on instinct more than anything else. He didn't know what was happening, but he felt the rising danger in the air. They ran through the dense forest, the ground beneath them shaking with each step. The rumble grew louder, and Jace could hear the sound of engines in the distance, echoing across the planet's surface. Something massive was coming, and it was heading straight toward them. After what felt like an eternity of running, they reached the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast valley below. Jace could see a fleet of dark ships descending from the sky, their engines roaring as they touched down on the rocky surface. The ships were massive, their shapes angular and intimidating. "They've found us," Lyra said, her voice tense. "The others, the ones who want to steal what remains of our power." Jace turned to her, his breath coming in short gasps. "Who are they? Why are they after you, after this power?" Lyra looked at him with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "They are the conquerors. They have been searching for us for centuries. They want to take what's hidden beneath the surface of this planet, something that could give them control over the entire galaxy." Jace's mind raced as he tried to piece everything together. The power Lyra spoke of, the ancient guardians of the planet, the strange tremors he had felt, it all started to make sense. But there was still so much he didn't understand. Lyra took a step closer to him, her eyes locking with his. "You have to decide, Jace. You have to choose whether you will help protect this power, or whether you will stand aside and allow them to take it." Jace felt a weight settle on his shoulders, a pressure that he had never known before. His mission had started as a simple weather study, but now it seemed like everything had changed. His life was no longer about just surviving on this cold planet. It was about making a choice that could change the fate of the galaxy itself. But before he could respond, the ships below began to deploy troops. Dozens of figures, clad in dark armor, poured out from the ships and began marching toward the cliff. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their intentions were clear. They were here for one thing: the power beneath the planet. "We don't have much time," Lyra said urgently. "You need to decide now. Will you help me fight them?" Jace looked at her, his heart racing. This wasn't the kind of decision he had ever thought he'd face. But in that moment he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let these people, these invaders, take control of something so powerful. Not when so much was at stake. "I'll help," he said, his voice steady now despite the chaos around him. "I'll fight." Lyra nodded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "Then we must prepare. They won't stop until they have what they came for, but we won't let them take it, not while we still have a chance." With that, she turned and led him down into the valley, where the battle for the future of the planet and the galaxy was about to begin.